Yeah, thank you guys for being here today. We really appreciate you taking the time to kind of listen to what we're out there doing. Just feel free during the presentation to ask questions as we go through this. We're intending that this will be just kind of a conversation and addressing your guys' whatever information you guys might need that we don't address in this presentation. Feel free to take notes, but I'm also going to be sending out some follow-up information. So if you guys did want to share with your colleagues or be able to kind of discuss what we're talking about, you don't necessarily have to take notes. We'll send you whatever you guys need. And then if you have any additional questions after we get off the Zoom call here, we're happy to have either a one-on-one phone conversation or schedule something via email. So I'm going to make a quick introduction to the FarmBox Foods team. So my name's Chris. I'm in charge of PR and marketing for FarmBox Foods. We've got Rick Walker, who is our Chief Strategy Officer. We've got Eric Gostinet, who is our VP of Sales. We've got Allison Elena, I think is how you pronounce it. Is that correct, Allie?
Yes.
She's one of our executive assistants, but she also has a background in education. So she's a former teacher, so really kind of helping us with this rollout. You guys may have done a little bit of research on our company already. If you did, great. If not, we're based right here in Colorado. We build farms inside of repurposed shipping containers. So we upcycle shipping containers and build farms into them. We're in multiple industries right now, like grocery, restaurants, hospitality, healthcare. We work with nonprofits, and now we're putting our container farms onto school campuses. We're huge believers in introducing this technology to kids at an early age and kind of creating that paradigm shift early on. And we believe in the ability of our farms to offer a comprehensive education that kind of captures a broad range of interests from students. So we wanted to start in Colorado because this is our own backyard right here, and there tends to be a lot more buy-in among school administrators. They kind of just get what we're trying to do. So with that, I'm going to throw it over to Eric Gostinek, and he is going to do a quick presentation with a few visuals. We can send this presentation to you after the fact, just so, again, you don't have to take notes if you don't want to. Yeah, take it away, Eric.
Awesome, Chris. Thank you very much. And I hate doing death by PowerPoint, so oftentimes I'll just kind of have pictures on here and we can just have an open conversation or talk about what's on the screen. But I'm VP of Sales, but I'm also VP of the Douglas County Farm Bureau on their board of directors. And so I often speak with schools. We always try to encourage schools to have agricultural programs and to be opening to learning about a very important industry, one of the biggest industries in this country. So generally when I meet with schools, I generally kind of ask students the first question, like, when I mention a farm, what comes to your mind? And this picture right here is generally the majority of what kids think of, like the red barn. They kind of think of like the Charlotte's Web type setting where you have your livestock, then you also have multiple crops. This is what I like to think of when I think of farming. Constraints into getting into this type, though, is that it's often generational. A lot of students that will not get into farming if their parents or their grandparents are not already incorporated into that field, because there's a lot of barriers into it, and the biggest one is the high cost of entry. If you're a student in an inner city in a suburban setting, and you're like, wow, I want to be a farmer, so how do I get 100 acres or 1,000 acres? And then on top of that, how do you get the equipment? So there's a lot of barriers into the entry. And what happens is when students think about those barriers, it might deter them from going to an ag school or furthering their education in that field. So, part of what we try to do is we're trying to capture that attention and really energize this next generation into, like, what can farming be? And it's not a perfect system. We waste $161 billion worth of food waste annually in the US. So it's a completely broken system. And we're just trying to, even if we can give a 1% or 2% savings off that number, it's a big percentage of what we can do with our systems. So this is generally what students think of as this type of farm. This is the reality of farming right here. This is generally a lot of acreage owned by large corporations. They're monocrop fields. And then the problem with this is that we're adding to the carbon footprint. So we're growing. The average head of lettuce goes 2,300 miles from the area of growth to its end consumer. So in between that time, you're losing your nutrient density. It's on a truck, so you're increasing your carbon footprint of traveling across country to deliver the goods. Then the other thing is that the majority of areas where, like, for instance, lettuce is grown, like California and Arizona, their average rainfall is like 13 inches a year. It takes about 35 to 40 inches of annual rainfall to have a quality crop. So that means that we're overly dependent upon our water sources, and we're shrinking those water sources. So the other is pesticides, and also susceptible to climate hazards. Early freezes, snowfalls, floods, hurricanes. So this is the majority of farming, and where we receive our food from. So this is where we come into play. So we start with the container. We add the growth mechanisms and the systems into that container. And then when you add a classroom or an educational setting, this is kind of where we're at here. We now have a containerized classroom, or a hydroponic classroom. When we first started building these farms, we were looking at, selling these to restaurant owners. And we didn't really realize the gravity of our reach, of what we could do. And then we realized educational systems. It's such a fun experience for a student to walk in, especially like in the middle of winter, into a growing environment and be able to take something from seed to harvest. And then not just from seed to harvest, but also learn about all the business that's involved and the disciplines that are involved to sell the food and what that looks like. So it really touches a lot of areas. We manufacture 3 different farms. The first farm design that we had was our vertical farm. Matt, that's what you guys are operating. The second design we had was a mushroom farm. I generally don't push that to too many schools, just because of the respiratory and some of the issues that are with the safety issues with running a mushroom farm. You can do it very safely. I don't recommend it for schools. Then the third is our fodder system, which we kind of lightly touched about it'd be fun to grow sorghum in there and test that out. So, but I want to touch on this. The first farm, and this is the most adaptable farm for campuses, is our vertical farm. So we have 3 grow walls inside the vertical farm. It can grow 4,104 plants at one time. This is all while using 3 to 5 gallons of water a day. So they're very sustainable. Our farms are also ADA compliant, which is a big deal for the school systems. If you incorporate a program that is not ADA compliant, there's a lot of red flags, a lot of tape that you have to go through. So we made our farms ADA compliant. So any student with any type of disability can have access to the whole house, front to back. We didn't want somebody to be stuck up near the seedling area, not be able to travel back into the walls. So we have 42 inches of workspace between there. On average, the farms, if you're running these to full capacity, sometimes schools have different goals with the farms. Some are not even worried about the outputs of them. But if you're running this to full capacity, it's about 3 acres of farmland annually. And this is done with full spectrum LED lights. And then our tube system, which is really nice, it's very efficient on labor. And it takes a lot of the guesswork out as far as like spacing out your plants. But we have a patented tube system. So the next slide, this just kind of mentions about what these can add and how they can add into the curriculum. And Matt, I appreciate you joining, and I know Chris will kind of reintroduce you a little bit down the road, but you can talk about what you're doing with your studies and with your students. But there's a lot of opportunities with the school. Some schools, they can provide the food to the cafeteria. Just a heads up, there are some schools that have ironclad contracts with their food service provider. So that's something to look into. But there's other things to do. You can teach the students how to run a CSA, which is consumer supported agriculture. And then that's where you can touch a lot of other disciplines, such as business management, marketing, math, and accounting. So by teaching students the full cycle of, okay, it's cool growing a plant, you can learn how to do that relatively easily. But what happens on the back end with that plant? Like, how does that work in the real world with the CSA, in the agricultural industry? So it's great to give them that insight, give those students that insight, because there's more than the cost of just a seed that goes into it. So they learn about the accounting, what it takes to sell a plant for a profit. And then the other part is you can also donate it to a food bank or a local nonprofit around the school. We love to see that partnership and that collaboration because that really does help satisfy like the service learning objectives that a lot of schools have. And it also teaches empathy, which is very, very important to us. So these are just kind of some general pictures. This is a picture of one of our grow walls. We can grow a huge variety of plants. We're growing everything from trees to cucumbers in our farm currently. This is a massive head of lettuce that our farmer Nick harvested. This is just a quick picture of our seedling table here. That's where the whole process starts. You can also grow microgreens. It really depends upon kind of whatever you want to do. And then this is just a quick picture of our campus in Sedalia. This gray farm is a vertical farm. This blue farm is actually a mushroom farm. The next farm, and this is for schools. This would make more sense schools in rural areas, or schools that do have their own livestock or animal department. The fodder farm is it's really one of my favorite farms because of what it represents. It's about food security for animals, and it allows for farmers and ranchers to keep their herds fed during times of drought. So the fodder farm that we have, like everything that we manufacture, is in a 40-foot container. But this produces over 850 pounds a day of fodder. And there's 6 grow towers, so you basically harvest 1 tower a day. And it's a 7-day growth cycle for barley. I'd love to test out sorghum at some point and see kind of where that comes into play, or a mixture, within this farm. But for schools that have, that are in that rural area, have a lot of FFA kids, CAF kids, 4-H. This is a great farm for them to learn how to run, because then they can also either sell or give that feed to their families if they need it. But it's just a great alternative because not everyone is necessarily interested in growing leafy greens. Fodder in the rural areas is a really neat classroom. Chris?
All right, does anybody have any questions so far? If you do, feel free to type them into the chat area, and we'll address those as they come through. But just to give you an idea, we do have several farms out there right now. We are on several school campuses as well. So there's the Vale School in Parker, which is they're going through the funding process right now to get one of our vertical hydroponic farms on their campus in Parker. There's also the Epic campus that focuses on teaching kids different trades and empowering them with different tech-oriented job skills. There's Valor Christian High School in Highlands Ranch, which is using parts from one of our prototypes. They're using it as part of their agriculture club. So the kids are actually growing giant heads of lettuce right there in the classroom, learning about the science that's involved in that. And then we also have a farm that we dropped off last summer at the Governor's School of Science and Math out in South Carolina. And Matt Myers, who runs that program, was kind enough to join us. So I was just hoping, Matt, if you wouldn't mind, just kind of give me an idea of what you're doing there at GSSM and kind of what it's like to develop the curriculum and how you guys are currently using the box.
Yeah, to speak of what Eric said, we say the the produce is a byproduct of what we're really trying to do with our lab, because it's mostly going to be just a learning laboratory across all those different disciplines Eric had touched on, and really we're just kind of getting started. Like, it just got to us the beginning of October, so I've only had a few cycles to really learn it. I've had a few students in there to kind of help learn the system, but I'm actually going to be offering my first research class this fall semester in it. And it's mostly kind of a project-based class where, I kind of give some overview about plant biology, hydroponics, controlled environment agriculture, and then really just let the students kind of come up with, a research project that we're going to continue to learn about, controlled environment agriculture, but then have them really hands-on learning laboratory throughout the semester. So we're still kind of developing our curriculum, but like I got kids that are coming in, you're talking about the ADA compliant, our head of our 3D printing club is actually in a wheelchair, and he got in there, and he's helping me kind of design some little projects. So he could care less about the plant biology and plant science part, but he's totally interested in the engineering and all of that behind it. So we've talked about certain little things I need, or hey, let's design a whole new growth tube, because we want to try and support a different style of crop that this traditionally would grow. So that's kind of some of the things we're looking at. And then the computer science professor he's all geeked out about the amount of data this thing produces, and he wants to build like real-time graphs and have that kind of stuff going on. So that's kind of the stuff. I mean, the possibilities are really endless. And you talked about the economics part. We have our VP of student affairs is actually a former economist, and we've talked about building, like, okay, let's just say, let's build a business plan and then build that out. And then you actually got to grow your stuff and figure out how to market it. And so that whole economics part of it, some of the kids that maybe, like I said, aren't really interested in the plant science part of it, they're going to be interested in all the, other aspects that this farm brings together.
Yeah, it really does kind of have a broad reach in terms of touching a lot of different subjects. Like Eric said, the kind of the math and accounting part of it, the actually taking care of the plants and kind of the nutrients that go into the water that are involved in keeping those plants healthy. One thing that I thought was really cool when, Matt and I had a phone call a couple of weeks ago, was you were talking about how you don't have any classes in there currently because you're still getting it stood up, but there's a lot of students that have come to you that are volunteering in the farm and actually working with the plants already.
Yeah.
Without getting credit for it. Yeah, it's just kind of the general interest that's out there among the students. Is that right?
Yeah. And actually today was their last sign up for classes next year. And I actually maxed out both my semesters on kids that wanted to come and take my research class. And so I don't know if anybody knows about GSSM. So we're a public residential high school that just has 11th and 12th graders. And one of our requirements to graduate is you have to do a research project. And a lot of times that happens between their junior and senior year. And they do a mentored research project either with a local business or some of our universities in the state. And it's a 6-week long project. And they have to do, some certain artifacts like a abstract and a 1-minute elevator pitch, and then write a paper and then do a presentation. And, some kids don't want to give up their 6 weeks of their summer in between their junior and senior year. So we've been trying to look for opportunities where they can actually do that research on campus during the semester, during this class, the school year. So this is one of the things that, we're trying to implement on our campus. And I think a lot of kids are receptive to that. Even in our, we pull from kids all across the state, even though we're a public school. It's, you got to meet certain requirements. And some will still do their summer research, and then they do want to do another research project when they see this type of technology, because it is, a new, CSA hasn't been around for a long time. So it's still this burgeoning industry, and there's so many aspects of it, from the nutrients, the lighting, CO2, just all the technology behind it besides the plant science. So I think that's what's really interesting for kids, is like, it's just, it's a crossroads for all these things they're interested in, like the technology. And then, where's my food coming from? I was just bringing home some plants I started in the lab to plant in my home garden. Don't tell anybody. But and my 4-year-old daughter was like, "Oh, I thought we just went to the grocery store and got these." And I'm like, "No, somebody has to grow those." So I think it's that too, is that education of, hey, your food's got to come from somewhere. And it is that traditional when everybody says farmers, that red barn. But this is that's what I joke with people that come and tour. I was like, the new farmer is the kid in the hoodie coming in with flip flops and his iPad, like walking into here. That's a new style of farmer that doesn't come to mind when you hear farm or farmer.
Yeah. And I really like kind of the hands-on nature of these classrooms, because there are certain kids that obviously just don't do as well reading out of a textbook. They'd rather do, and that's how they learn. And this is a good example of how they can, not really get their hands dirty because we're not growing in soil, but a chance to interact with plants and actually have something tangible at the end of the lesson. So and what I really like is the wrap that you guys put on your farm. You guys call it the hydroponic research lab, and it's got photos of kids interacting with plants. Just kind of a beautiful box there on your facility, kind of fitting in with the rest of the building. So yeah, I think it's my favorite wrap. But
yeah, it's gotten plenty of publicity in town for sure.
Good. Glad to hear that. Well, thanks so much for your input, Matt. I really do appreciate you joining this phone call. I'm going to throw it over to Rick Walker, who's going to talk about kind of the implications and impacts on future career paths for students.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, one of the things that in my previous life, I had 32 years at Southern Illinois University, and I've looked over my fair share of applications and those that are wanting to get into the universities. What I want to do is be able to tie this all in, and what we're doing is providing an opportunity to utilize a lab for practical uses. And we've all had the scenario where we've been in class and we've often wondered, why am I taking this class? What's this going to do for me? In just about every class, every curriculum that you have, this is going to be able to put hands-on experience and application of that class, all the way from English to health to shop. And it's going to teach them responsibility, empathy, as well as give them an understanding of why they're being educated. And what this does is it taps into their imagination and their enthusiasm for education, because now they know how to apply it, what it is they're doing. And what a better time than with our young students, so that if they choose to go to college, they're going to have a better experience and utilize that experience for a better education, which is going to lead to a better job and a better possibility of moving up in the world. What Eric had mentioned earlier, all of the different aspects of the curriculum, all of that can be tied into exactly what we're doing. So every class can have a little bit or a little part in the progress of this business that the school can start to function. Now, I mentioned universities. One of the rare things that I run across is the flow. We used to look at curriculum and extracurricular. We used to look at the academic background, and time will change and things flow with importance weighing heavily a little bit more and more on something else. What I never saw was, hey, I ran a business. So it wasn't, I worked as a server, or I worked at this department. Your students will be able to have the experience of saying, I ran a business from every aspect of that. Now, that's an eye opener for somebody that's looking at an application, because that's a less of a risk student than somebody else who might be, I don't know what I want to do. They're probably applying to that department specifically based on what they've experienced in their previous education. Now, Eric also had mentioned that, you know, this is an attainable market currently for your future students. So if I'm a student and I don't like business and I just don't kind of fit in, but I'm really excited about this farm, we call it the Xbox of agriculture. You know, it's got lights, it's got dial-ins, it's got parameters they've got to follow. But, you know, this is a great way to make a living with the mushroom farm. You know, you're looking at over a 10-year period, $1.2 million of revenue. In a vertical hydroponic farm on the private market, that could be anywhere from $700,000 to $900,000. That's pretty good income for, you know, not a whole lot of work or labor that has to go into it. But that's a nice avenue for some people to get into jobs. Now, what we believe is that if you can tap into their imagination and you can do that through innovation, then they're going to be prepared for tomorrow. Innovation today is going to be traditional tomorrow. But if you're preparing your young students, they're going to be well equipped, well educated, and well prepared to handle what's coming our way. And we've all experienced the supply chain, the lack of food. Our food deserts have grown instead of shrunk. And now you've got a scenario where you've got a farm that's hyper local, and being able to teach them the value of the food, what nutrition actually means, so that they don't just go into a grocery store and pick something off of the shelf, which we all do. But maybe they'll start checking it. Maybe they'll have a little more respect of what's going into their bodies and how that's prepared. So we think this is a great avenue to incorporate and throw some excitement and innovation into the learning process.
Definitely. And to your point about the bright lights and all that kind of coming into play as soon as the kids step in there, that's one thing that I've noticed as we give tours to kids that are going on field trips out to our operating farms, is kind of that wow factor never really gets old. When they step in there, the look on these kids' faces is just incredible. And when they see that it's something that's tech assisted, that, you know, the kids these days are a lot more familiar with technology than most of us are. Suddenly it kind of gives them a sense of empowerment that, hey, maybe I can actually move the needle on world hunger or other, you know, local community issues that stem from food insecurity. So I think it's really cool, you know, the kind of the bright eyes that the kids get and the possibilities that I think they see as soon as they walk into those containers. But with that, I'm going to open it up for questions. If you guys have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself, or feel free to type a question into the meeting chat if you'd like. All right, seeing none at this point. So you guys may come up with some questions after we get off of this call. And if you do, feel free to reach out directly to me. My email address is chris@farmboxfoods.com. We're also happy to have a one-on-one phone call. Like I said, if you have additional questions about maybe what this looks like at your school or in your school district, and kind of the technical components of it and the logistics of getting approval for one of these. But I want to thank you all for joining us and for participating in this conversation. Yeah, just let us know if there's anything else that comes up. We're going to be posting this webinar. We've been recording it. We're going to post it on our YouTube page, link to it from our website. So you will have an opportunity to share this with other folks. And then we'll also send some follow-up information, as I mentioned, about the vertical hydroponic farm and kind of where we're at on school campuses and the educational plan. With that, thank you guys very much for joining, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. And if anybody, Chris, also, if anybody, you know, wants to talk to me about kind of our process and how we did, feel free to share my contact information. If anybody ever wants to reach out to me, I'm happy to talk about kind of what we're doing and where we see the future, for sure.
Matt, thank you for your time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, it was
thank
a pleasure.
you.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah. And I can always get y'all some sorghum seed. Let me know. I got a guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
We may be interested in trying that, so we'll
Yeah.
keep your
We
number.
take
Yeah.
you up on it.
And we
Yeah.
actually, the Governor's School of Agriculture just opened a couple years ago, and they're strictly just focused on agriculture. So that may be an avenue too. But
Great.
that's something I can talk to you all about later.
Excellent. Well, thanks so
good.
much
Awesome.
for offering that, Matt. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks everybody. Appreciate your time, and feel free to reach out with anything else.